Since film is one of the most expensive art forms known to man, it's rare that you see a movie that could take the time to be meditative. And that's exactly what today's film did. Howdy, I'm Jeff Goldsmith, and this is the Q&A. My agenda is simple. Each week, I plan to bring you in-depth insights into the creative process of storytelling. Folks, I have quite a Q&A for you today. I have co-writer, director Abel Ferrara and co-writer Christ Zois to chat about their latest film, Siberia. And you know, it is a meditative film, and it's so rare that you get to see meditation on film because it is such an expensive art form that people want things that are a bit more, I don't want to be mean and say formulaic, but just familiar. And what's interesting about Siberia is how unfamiliar it often is, but at the same time gets to the root of some of our very basic fears that we all share. So there's a lot going on in this movie, and it was a fascinating chat between Abel and Chris about their creative process. So I know you'll dig this episode. Now, you know, this was done as a virtual screening, and I want to thank Lionsgate again for letting us do a virtual screening of this movie. It was brought to the people who signed up on our free screening list right into their homes to watch it for free, and then see the Q&A for free as well, of course, but see it as a preview before it was released publicly to the world. So if you're not currently on our list, I'd love for you to sign up over at backstory.net/events. It's free to sign up, and you'll get emails from us when there's an event in person. Hopefully one day, I hope we'll return to those, but for now, virtually. And you could join for free and watch the movie for free and get access to the podcast before the rest of the world, because it is tagged right into the end of the movie. And speaking of things to do while you're surfing around online, I would love for you to check out Backstory Magazine over at backstory.net. You can read us on a desktop or laptop or via our iPad app, Backstory. You know, issue 43, which was our Oscar issue, is still being updated with new articles. We recently put in one for In the Heights. We recently put in for Luca. So, you know, we always, because we're a digital magazine, are able to slide in new articles even after we publish. And that's something that is great that our subscribers get for free. I hope you'll consider becoming a subscriber. You could use code word SAVE5 to save $5 off a subscription of Backstory Magazine for 1 year, and it gives you access to anything new that we publish and our archive as well, which currently goes back to about issue 28 and is growing as we add more issues into the archive. So look, it would really mean a lot to me to have my podcast listeners and YouTube watchers consider becoming a subscriber to Backstory Magazine, because it's my passion project. So thanks for considering. But now, without any further ado, let's jump right into our interview with co-writer director Abel Ferrara and co-writer Christ Zois about their latest film, Siberia. Okay, Abel, Chris, welcome. It's good to see you both. How you guys doing?
Hey, guys, good.
So, you know, I want to kind of start with your histories, give people a sense of breaking in. Abel, you made shorts at SUNY Purchase. You know, you were basically in film school. What was the most important thing that you gleaned from film school?
I should have stayed there. I mean, I was making films I started making films when I was 16. So, my first film school, the first school they let us into was Rockland Community College. It was like, I was from Peekskill, so it was like the stepping stone to the big time, which was SUNY. It was the first year of Purchase, actually.
Okay.
It was being, laid out as going to be a big time film school. Anyway, so I got there, and it was like my last year at school, or maybe my last 2 years at school. And they had just barely started the film program, but they had equipment. At that time, it wasn't like, have iPhone, will shoot,
Right.
You needed the stuff, especially we always wanted to have, we wanted films with dialogue, which was then a whole other fucking Megillah,
Right.
So we made, we actually made 3 films at school.
Well, one of the toughest things about graduating for film school students is, what do you do next? And if you're willing to talk about it, if you don't want to talk about it, it's no big deal. But it's widely known that you transitioned to do basically a porn movie because you weren't finding. It wasn't basically. It was.
Yes,
it was.
It wasn't that. We came out of film school. We had no history with it. I didn't come from a family that really knew anybody. except actually connected to people who were doing those kind of films. So we're in New York City, and we were going nowhere fast. And that industry was, in Variety, the top 10 films in, grossing films out of the 50 were all porno films, and when you're a desperado, you just want to shoot, At that time, we just wanted to shoot 35. And, if you see in movies like Cello and, the Godard shit, you start convincing yourself that, it might be something that it's not. You know what I mean? But
a lot of directors do that as they get out of school. Like they have that choice to make. And a lot of directors that actually go the porn route have trouble ever doing a legitimate movie.
Which directors actually got the dick sucked in the first 35 movies? A lot. Which lot do you know?
Well, what I mean is they have that choice to make, and a lot of them don't make it out of porn if they go the porn route, because there's a stigmatism. And you directed your first film, this film with your girlfriend in it. What was the biggest lesson you learned, and what was the transition like?
Which one is this? Which one we're talking about?
The porn
killer.
What was your biggest lesson shooting on 35?
The biggest lesson is that the biggest lesson that we looking back at it, fucking 45 years later, we could have just, we should have just chilled out. We didn't act. If we were going to do what we're going to do, we didn't need to do it. But at the time, patience wasn't, our thing. I wanted to work. I wanted to get it going. So I didn't really fucking care. We made a lot of
Did you have trouble transitioning to regular cinema?
No, man. We went from, making an exploitation porno film to making an exploitation violent movie. So,
right.
What was the transition? Was this, we're doing what we want to do anyway. So,
sure.
We didn't ask permission to do that, and we didn't ask permission to do Driller Killer. So,
right. And Driller
kind of basically the other side of the same coin,
Driller Killer is a wild movie, and that's kind of what puts you on the map towards legitimate, cinema outside of that industry. Chris, I want to start with your breaking in story. You got a degree in philosophy at Rutgers, and you became a shrink, and then you wrote a book, Think Like a Shrink. And Think Like a Shrink did really well for you. And then you wrote a similar book. And, to date, you've had 5 screenplays produced. 4 of them are with Abel. Why'd you decide to become a screenwriter?
Getting into screenwriting is all Abel's fault. I blame him. Mm-hmm. Abel was doing a film that became Blackout, and a mutual friend of ours said he needed a psychiatric scene and he needed some technical help. Abel and I met at his apartment. This is probably what, Abel, 96?
Yeah, you got me. It was somewhere, somewhere.
So we talked for 5 hours, and it was a wide-ranging conversation, also about character development elements of the film. At the end of that time, he said, I don't have a writer. Would you write this? And unencumbered by fact, I said, sure. I was in the middle of writing a textbook on short-term therapy. So I put that aside, and I worked with Abel, and I said, this is a lot more rewarding. It's a lot more fun talking to him than it is, writing a textbook. And that really got us started. We basically have a very similar outlook on life in general. And when Abel comes up with an idea, I get it. It's like it resonates with what I'm thinking about. And that was true from the Blackout, New Rose Hotel, Welcome to New York. And really, we can talk about it later, but Siberia has kind of been not the culmination of our thinking about a wide range of subjects, but it's certainly getting there.
That makes sense. I'm going to talk about a few of your works, Abel, before we get to Siberia, and then we're going to dive head deep into Siberia and your partnership as writers. I would be remiss if I didn't bring up King of New York. I could do a whole episode of that because I love the film. I'm just going to boil it down to one question. What was your biggest lesson making that film?
You learn so much making a movie. So I couldn't, one thing, it's like you make these films to learn, to grow, it was like
what was your favorite day of shooting on King of New York?
Oh, King of New York was, Probably the first day and the last day. Now, the first day was actually, Chris, was the day, it was the first time we were walking, was actually in that, like, you know, where Chris comes in and shoots the guy playing cards in that Italian mob place, right?
Yeah.
And we're down in like that fucking end of Chinatown, but we're all like, you know, real gangsters in there. And the whole crew was there. Fishbird, everybody was there and walking. And we were looking for that little kid who was the Chinese gangster, right? In the movie. Yeah. Not the head guy, but his second, his partner, who's like this little young, but a real deal dude. And we'd been looking for him for 6 months. He was in China Grove. We couldn't find the guy. So we started shooting the scene. They tapped me on the shoulder and say, somebody's outside. You better, you know, they're having a problem with these Chinese kids outside because they want to shake down, you know, they want money for shooting on the street. Right?
Yeah.
So, you know, so I go outside. And there is the kid we've been looking for to be in the movie. I forget what his name is. I says, what the fuck? Where you been, man? You know, you got to be in the movie. What do you mean? You're not shaking us down. You got to be in the movie. Okay. Anyway, then walk-in came and, you know, he's going to blast this guy in the scene. And it's the first day I ever shot with him, you know, and everybody's standing there. He says to me, you know, I have a hard time pointing a gun at another actor. Right? I said, oh, really? He says, why didn't she shoot him? Like, why don't I hand a gun to the, you know, Teresa, the black chick? Let her shoot him. I'm thinking, you got a hard time. I'm thinking, wait a minute, you got to shoot like 20 people. You know, you're the king of New York. You're going to be blessed. You got a hard time pointing a gun at another actor. Anyway, I don't know. We got around it. So he went from, he didn't want to point a gun at another actor to shooting that guy about 10 fucking times. Like, you know, especially with that over the top, you know, that cockroach killer we call, but that, you know, and nobody shoots anybody like Walken. I mean, you know, nobody does anything like him, actually. So,
out of all the things you would say, I did not expect that. Your career really took off after King of New York. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Bad Lieutenant. I've always been a fan of the film. I saw it in theaters and it was just an amazing theatrical experience in which half the audience I knew I was showing up to an Abel Ferrara movie, but half the audience had no clue what they were walking into. And it was just wild. And, you know, I've read that the 60-page script with Tamris Lund that you guys,
you're good.
that you share a co-writing credit on. I'd read that like Keitel basically kind of threw it out and wanted to kind of find his character improvisationally as he was shooting.
No,
I'm just curious.
No, he didn't want to find anything. No, he just threw it out. He just threw it out. He didn't want to find anything. He read the first 3 pages and tossed that in the garbage. And then Victor Argo, who was a mutual friend and a very close friend of Harvey, basically told him, "Hey, dude, give this fucking script, you know, give this guy a chance and give this fucking, you know, this whole thing. You can't just toss it just." You know, after, but, you know, it wasn't only that, it was a short script. You know, we had the big type to try to make it seem longer, you know, so he kept saying it was like reading an eye chart. He couldn't fucking lock in. But actually, he locked into this. There was one scene that Zoe wrote. You know, we almost didn't shoot it. I mean, it was like Zoe wrote this fucking long scene in the confessional when, you know, the nun was confessing her sin anyway. So Harvey like locked into that scene, and then that was it.
But so as you're rewriting during production, is that what was going on? There was literal rewrites during production? Because I'm curious what that was like for you as a director. That's not an easy way to shoot.
No, I mean, it's not a matter of rewriting. I mean, the scenes were there and Harvey's going to play them, you know. There was another film where Walken was going to play that. Up to like the very end. I mean, Walken was going to play the Bad Lieutenant and all the rehearsals were with Chris. So that was a whole other fucking movie. Because Chris's take on the same scenes were like some kind of musical comedy next to what Harvey was doing, you know? Yeah. So then about 2 weeks before the film, I was sitting at the Chateau Marmont with Ed Pressman, and Chris just walks in and just says to Ed, he says, you know, I know exactly what Abel wants, and I can't give it to him. And he gets up and splits. Okay. And there we are. Okay. me with the director fee already spent and, no movie star. So, but anyway.
It's a wild
all worked
movie,
out for the best. Anyway.
And Keitel really made it his. I just want to know, because we've run into so many bad cops since that movie, and the scene that's always resonated with people is the car scene when he pulls over the two girls. And the screening I was at, some people got up and walked out because they literally couldn't believe it was happening on scene. I'm just curious what it was like filming that and going through that kind of scene with Keitel, because it was shocking when it came out. I think it's still shocking today.
Harvey's doing his thing. You know what I'm saying? It's like actually that night we're out there in the rain, and I hate these Hollywood films where it's raining, but none of the actors get wet.
Right.
But Harvey wanted all this plastic. He didn't want to get wet. And I'm like, oh, fuck, man, this is going to be one of these, you know what I mean? So he's like, he's got himself set up, right? And, we didn't have play. This was like a street movie, bro. We didn't have playback and nothing, right?
Right.
So we got two cameras jammed in there, and there's plastic all over. It's raining like a motherfucker. It's like the meat market before the meat market. And Harvey just rolls through the fucking thing. I can't even see what he's doing. You know what I'm saying? You dig what I mean? I'm like, I can't get in the shot. You don't want to be in a reflection. There's no fucking, there's no, what do they have now? Video tents and look, 20, everybody's got to fucking, see what's going on. It was like, we just rolling the dice, and usually we do one take and that would be it, and, but then we did the one take and it's always like, and in Blackout, when we worked with Dennis Hopper, he had the same thing, like after one take, like he'd say to Dennis, yeah, let's try. That was great, man. It was great. It's fantastic. Let's try it again. And he'd go, why? It'd be like, so I'd always be prepared for the why. Like maybe the film breaks, maybe it gets scratched. You know what I mean? Give some technical answer to the why. But Harvey was almost in the same way. So we did the one, it was a pretty monster take, but I'm figuring, I'm not seeing it that clear. You dig? I don't really know what's going on. The DP is like, he was expecting something else, I think, and getting them girls out of the car and the whole deal. But then Victor walks up, Victor Argo, the same Victor Argo, the great Victor Argo. And he was late, and Harvey goes, what the fuck, man? I just did the fucking scene, and you're late, And then he says, let's do another one for Victor. Not almost for the film, just like for the fucking performance of it, right? I'm thinking, thank God, let's get this, to set up a whole scene like that, the guy does a 10-minute take, then everybody goes home for the night. That's like, crazy. But anyway, so then we put Victor up, we put him up in a chair somewhere so at least he could see what's going on, and then we like set up the cameras for different angles and, Harvey, did it again. So
it's definitely a scene that is iconic to the film. It's a wild performance. Again, I could talk more about it. I'm going to move on for a second. Chris,
weren't they babysitters, those two girls, in real life?
I didn't want to get into that.
Well, Chris, no one's been able to observe Abel's creative habit like you have, so up close and personal. What are some of the interesting creative habits you've noticed about Abel over the years, both as a writer and a director, that you found interesting or inspiring or even quirky?
He has a grasp of universal issues, and that takes place both on a philosophical level and also on a human level. So I believe that his vision of things encompasses both. And I think that's very important because there are very few people, never mind directors, that can actually do that. For instance, with The Blackout, his take on Maddie. I mean, there were so many things going on under the surface, and that's how we really connected, talking about that character. And the same thing with Willem in New Rose Hotel, Christopher Walken in New Rose Hotel. Abel has a great deal of empathy for the human condition, but he also delves into and thinks about, and this is why I think Siberia is so important. There are so many universal issues, so many philosophical issues that really are the backstory or the subtext of Siberia. Abel, one day said to me, look, I want to do this movie. Originally, he was motivated or inspired by Jung's Red books.
You're talking about Carl Jung's personal diary, which has been translated into the Red books. And it's
exactly
basically his study of dreams.
Something. But actually, Abel was seeing past what Jung was looking at. In Siberia, we get into so many issues that are epistemological, and even more, how we view reality. I mean, there's a story, and then there's all of that. And, Abel sees these things. And as I said when we were first conversing about it, it resonates with a lot of the things that I believe. And so he doesn't have to take me aside and explain to me what he's trying to do. I get it.
Let's talk about your creative process as writers for a moment. When you sit down to write, how important is outlining to your process? And we could start talking about applying this to Siberia. Did you start with an outline for Siberia?
Not really. We start with a shared vision. Now, if you want to demonstrate how quirky we are, I did 3, because I'm a psychiatrist, obviously, I did 3 therapy sessions with Willem dealing with this film. And then we would send them to Abel, and then he would kind of incorporate them into his thoughts and his processes. So if you're looking at us in terms of outlines, no, we don't do outlines. We move forward, I'll write something, he'll have a reaction to it, he'll write something, I'll speak on it. And it's really viewing things in a very collaborative way, but in a shared vision. I mean, that's the best way I can say it. But with Siberia, I think we've moved into new territory. There's the story, which is compelling. And that story is based on some things that are autobiographical from Willem, from Abel, from me. And then there's the larger story, but there's also the whole issue now of, what is reality? We started this 3-4 years ago. We have quantum physicists now saying that consciousness really creates reality. And much of that was in Siberia.
It's interesting that you say that it started with a therapy session. I know that Willem had a fear of dogs, and you put him on literally a dog sled in this movie around a bunch of dogs. Was that something that came out of the sessions?
No, we really weren't talking about things like that. It was wide-ranging topics that in some way would impact how we viewed the formulation of this film.
Abel, when you sit down as a screenwriter, do you give yourself a page count to hit each day, or do you want to write for a certain amount of hours? Tell us about your writing.
I couldn't. I'm not really a writer, you know what I mean? So it's like if, I get something down on paper that I could show Chris and Willem, it's like a miracle to me. You know what I mean? And I wouldn't be able to write it up.
He's being modest. If you look at 444 or Tommaso, he's a very, very modest guy. He's a very good writer, but that's because he has a vision. When we were at MoMA during the retrospective for Abel's work, someone asked him if he'd do New Rose Hotel the same way. And the answer really is no. Obviously not, because thought processes and a view of the world and one's personal philosophy changes and evolves. And Siberia is kind of the evolution, for me, going back to, let's say, the Blackout New Rose Hotel, Welcome to New York.
It's really tough to get anything funded these days. And I was not aware at the time that you guys were doing a Kickstarter to get Siberia going. You wound up raising $18,725 for a
No, you're kidding.
500,000 goal.
Where the 3,500 come from?
and so, I mean, that was what the Kickstarter numbers said.
Well, these guys got me hooked up. They got me hooked on this. To me, the concept is brilliant. The people who are actually going to see films decide which films they want to, you know what I mean? So you buy your ticket in advance. This way you could kind of custom fit the movie you're going to see. So this sounded like a brilliant model to me. Okay. Everybody's telling me it ain't going to work, but my thing is just do it. And who cares, Only I went into this. So we went to Cannes. First of all, the other thing is it was such a nebulous fucking concept. Right. You almost got to do it just to figure out what the fuck it is. You know what I'm saying? Because when you start explaining it, you don't even know. Anyway, so we went to Cannes with the thing, and the guys from Kickstarter were all fucking psyched up, and I'm like their fucking front man preaching this like it's the gospel. And then the night we started, the first 5 minutes, we got $10,000. One guy laid out 10G.
Wow.
In the first 5 minutes. I said, motherfucker, where has this been my whole life? This is like candy from a baby. You know what I'm saying? And I was, well, anyway, like you say, 6 years later, we now have 18,000. Which wouldn't have paid that book. Okay, so never mind the people around us. So it's one of these great concepts, but we made the financing the way we always did the financing. It was European-based financing. You get three different, I'm in Europe, so it's a socialistic deal. Because you got to remember, now I've been working, say, 20 years on and off here. In America, who would ever go to the government for money? You think? I mean, I could call up Obama or, and ask him, hey, call up Trump, ask him, but in Europe, that's how they finance movies, because they're supporting the work, because they're supporting the people, the people who work, the socialist country. So we did it with Italy and Germany as a partner and Mexico.
What was the final
three
budget?
Countries together.
What was the final budget?
Plenty. I'm not, I made I promised the lawyers and the producers I keep my mouth shut up. We had the money we needed, and we had, we had enough money to do something as ambitious as, bringing a bunch of people, up the top of a fucking mountain in Italy. And then, we use a lot of that, the interior, the interiors we wanted to build because we didn't want to really, we're based on actual places, but we wanted to use a whole distortion trip. So we were in a studio in Munich, and then we went to Mexico for the desert stuff.
How many days was the shoot? How long of
probably we shot 20. For us, 25, 26 is long. You think? Because like Bad Lieutenant, we shot in say 15 days. Tommaso, we shot in 12 days. You dig? So this may be, but it wasn't like 25 straight. We shot there, we chilled out, we got it together, went to Germany, pulled it off, flew to fucking Mexico. We actually went to LA to fight the bear. So we had time and money. There's no, to do it. Took a while to pull it together, but we did it.
I guess, Chris, I would ask, between those periods when there was like breaks when you were going from country to country, was there any retooling needed on the script? Was there something that kind of you had learned? And we're going to get into spoilers in just a second. So I'm just curious, were you continuing to write? Was it evolving as you were shooting?
No.
Okay.
We've never done that. I've never done more than a first draft of a script, whether it's New Rose Hotel or Welcome to New York. But that just doesn't come up.
But he's getting the dailies, what we're shooting. He's seeing what we're shooting. Sure. You know what I'm saying? So.
No, we discuss it, yes. But as far as rewrites, I don't recall we ever did rewrites. Am I correct, Abel?
No, yeah, it's like it's a little too late, you know. They're going to say, I mean, you know, when
The
you're
train's out of the
flying,
station.
yeah, right. The train, you take that train from fucking the top of that mountain to Munich, and then you know when you finish there, you know, fucking jet in the middle of nowhere, you know, Mexico City, then another 4-hour flight. I'm not, you know, if I got to be rewriting now, I'll be. It's not the place to
No,
be rewriting.
most of our discussions over dailies is, you know, what it meant, you know, what that scene really was about.
You know, I think it would be impossible to continue without talking spoilers. So although this podcast
let's do it, man. You can't. This isn't a spoiler kind of movie.
Yep. Although this was first seen by people in a virtual screening who had just watched the movie. For all of our podcast listeners who have not yet seen Siberia, press pause right here. Go see Siberia. Rent it.
Go see it, man. Yeah.
Go see it, and then come back and finish the rest of this episode.
Playing all over the theater. It's playing in movie theaters, man. So go see it in the movie theater.
Go see it at home, see it in movie theaters, come back.
Pandemic is like lightening up, right? Get out of the fucking house and go to movies.
Well, so we're going to get into the spoilers right now. So you've been warned, folks that haven't yet seen the movie. But so, you know, for both of you, redemption, it's a thematic that you return to a lot in your work. And I'm just curious, you know, that seems to be to an extent what Clint seeks in Siberia. And I'm just curious how you guys kind of handled redemption here, because it was such a different way of storytelling that there's only, you know, minor victories for Clint rather than, you know, a big redemptive moment. So tell us about kind of handling redemption in Siberia.
Well, that's what I was referring to when I'm talking about the evolution of our thinking. He may be looking for redemption and he may not. He may find it and he may not. It's almost the idea that I seek salvation because I know I will always be denied it. And that was the philosophical premise in Siberia behind any specific subject, like, let's say, redemption. It's not a movie about a guy who goes out looking for himself and finds himself. You know, he may have found something, he may not have found something. And that then kind of borders on what we were referring to before when we were talking about the ultimate nature of reality, the linguistic games. You know, he's around people that don't even speak his language. The point being, that's not important because we're all in the prison house of language. And language can only get us so far. You know, that's why when he talks to the magician, he says, I hear, you know the black arts. Well, what is he talking about? He's talking about magic. What is magic? Well, magic is really the unknowable. How does one know the unknowable? And that's one of the premises that, you know, Abel and I were talking about when we're talking about making a film like Siberia. You know, how do you depict the incomprehensible?
One of the things that you both captured so well was the dream state, which is, you know, very difficult to capture on screen. And, you know, we have different periods in a man's life coming back and forth, which makes it, you know, fascinating to watch. And it's not an easy thing to do. So what were the challenges of both writing the dream state, but also Abel capturing it on film?
I think the opposite. I mean, film itself is like so conducive to dreams. You're almost you know, walking in the movie theater, shutting the lights and singing it, or even locking into your fucking computer. You're putting yourself in that kind of half dream place anyway.
You see, that's what we're referring to when we're talking about, well, okay, let's take a dream and how important the dreams were in the film. Are those dreams, are they really recreations of what actually happened in this man's life? Are they things that he misconstrued? I mean, what is a memory? You know, you hook memory up and the question how suspect memory is with how suspect the validity of a dream in terms of interpreting or representing an event. And it's what Abel refers to. You know, even making a film is a dream. And then finally, what is this guy's consciousness? He's isolated and alone. A lot of reviewers have picked up on that in a big way. Okay. But we're all isolated alone if we're going to say that our consciousness is part of the space-time continuum and that we're creating our own reality. So is this man creating a reality even in his dream? That's an intriguing point, and that's why there's so much ambiguity in this film.
I welcome the ambiguity. We don't see enough of it. Things are so, tied up with a bow in movies these days. It's interesting talking about his loneliness, though, Chris, because one of the things that was fascinating about the movie was his best company was often himself, in which you have Dafoe playing his father, his brother, different versions of himself in time. At what point did you realize that the concept of self keeping self company and the evolution of self was going to be so prevalent?
It's sort of just evolved. It's not like we sat back and said, that's what we're going to do. But as things continued in both the script when we were doing it and in the filming, that became obvious. What I like about working with Abel is much of the time, I'll look at a scene and I'll see things in it that I didn't realize were there when we were either putting it on paper or filming it. I'll look at it daily and then I'll revisit it again. I'll watch the whole film. And what you're referring to is exactly one of those things, which gets into the question of, is there a self? Are we really fracturing time, and are we fracturing that individual? I mean, again, his perception of his father, is there any reality to it besides his consciousness?
Yeah. I mean, you've gotten a lot of mileage out of your philosophy degree, without a doubt, Chris. Abel,
he didn't go to Rockland Community College. You can still tell that.
Abel, I have a question for you. This is your sixth collaboration with Willem Dafoe. He's a force of nature. You're a force of nature. What could you tell us that you've learned about directing Dafoe over the years?
It's just to continue with, what you're saying, the idea of, in the beginning, it was, okay, there's a bar somewhere and there's two guys working at the bar, right? So it's like, that's a concept somewhere in the middle of nowhere, okay? But it exists, say, place where fur trappers go, Inuit Indians, people on fucking, whatever, and two guys are working to keep the place going. Then the thought that Willem is going to play both these guys. Okay, so now it becomes an acting issue. Okay, because this is the beginning. That's like page 3. And if I'm running this by Willem and he's not, reacting to it in a positive way, I'm not getting to page 4, So, but he is digging on it. Not again, no, now we get to the practicality of he's playing another guy. Then the question is that guy there? Well, you got to film somebody when he's playing the other guy. He's there. The camera's on somebody. You can't play and imagine you can't play a figment of his imagination in a movie, so the practicality of how to, the process now goes from the writing, the discussions, the therapy sessions to Willem playing the fucking scenes. Like you say, Harvey doing that scene in front of the car. What does it matter where I was, if I saw it, would I, you got the actor is, he's on his own now, and yet, sure, we're there with what's he wearing? How's we filming that? What's blah, blah, blah. But, the essence of that, we shoot pretty, straight up, man, just pointing the fucking camera on it, basically. I mean, it's on him to do it. So.
Ooh, hey, I'm jumping in really quick to remind you to become a subscriber to Backstory Magazine over at backstory.net. If you've never read us before, you could read us on a desktop or laptop or via our iPad app, Backstory. And you could, of course, test drive us by reading our free issue. If you like what you read, you could then become a subscriber. And if you'd like to become a subscriber, and I hope you do, you could use code word SAVE5. That discount code will save you $5 off a 1-year subscription to Backstory Magazine. So it will get you access to our new issues that we publish, and of course, any of our old issues that we publish in our archive. Our archive currently goes back to about issue 28, and we're continuing to add new issues to it as time goes on. But you know what? The other thing that we do is we add new articles to currently existing issues. So for instance, we've recently added a digital article about In the Heights, and also about Luca to issue 43, which is our current issue, our Oscar issue. So we continue to deliver content as it comes out, even after we've published. And that's just one of the many beauties of being a digital magazine. Look, it would really mean a lot to me to have my podcast listeners and YouTube watchers become subscribers. So thanks for considering. But now let's jump right back into our interview about Siberia. I hope you'll spread the word about Siberia because, you know, independent films like this, especially something that's so meditative, they sometimes get lost in the broader scope of things. And it's really important to be able to highlight independent film at all times. So if you're an Abel Ferrara fan and you enjoy the movie, I hope you'll consider spreading the word about that as well. But now, without any further ado, let's jump right into our interview with co-writer-director Abel Ferrara and co-writer Christ Zois about their latest film, Siberia. What's a moment that surprised you with Dafoe? You know, all the prep didn't matter. There was just a moment that came to him that surprised you as a storyteller.
Nothing he does is going to surprise me. You know what I mean? I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, that's his, you know, that's his thing. He's going to pull all the shit out of, you know, basically his job is to surprise everybody, is to,
Sure.
You know, make it interesting, you know, make it, you know, not just make it work, make it fucking interesting.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things that I was really surprised by watching the movie was, you know, you're seeing the different emotional traumas of life. You're seeing the broken marriage. You're seeing, you know, the childhood trauma, but the genocide and the death camp was a real surprise. And I'm curious what led you to that place in this narrative for the character of Clint.
Well, it's another thing that Abel's dealt with, let's say, going back to The Bad Lieutenant, the whole idea of sin, and what constitutes sin. And as Clint is in search of whatever he's looking for, whether it's himself or some knowledge, he passes some of the universal issues through his experience or his fantasies or reality. And that whole idea of a death camp is ultimate sin. And how does one deal with sin? And then you get the other side of the coin, which Abel dealt with years ago in The Bad Lieutenant, which is forgiveness. You know, can there be forgiveness in the face of certain sin? And this is what I was referring to early on. There's so many elements in this movie, and I find it so satisfying that there are. You know, we're not to sit down and talk about just the story doesn't do justice to, you know, Siberia. Again, it's not the culmination because, you know, we're going to move on and do other things. But it certainly is, you know, right now, the apotheosis of so much that has concerned us and certainly concerned Abel. Again, you know, The Bad Lieutenant is a brilliant analysis of sin and forgiveness. And in Siberia, it's just touched on. He goes by it. There's not a commentary on it. He doesn't do something that enlightens the audience as to how he resolves it. There is no solution, and there's not even a resolution. He just passes it.
Sure. I mean, and then you return to it later, and it's basically a bullied kid. You know, everyone's kicking the box that he's in. So, I mean, it's interesting to have that revisitation later. Abel, you were shooting this all over the world, working with different crews in different countries. What was your biggest lesson for adapting like that? Because, you know, going country to country, it's just rare to see, you know, especially for a film that's considered to be independent.
I got great new respect for Dwight Eisenhower. That's one thing. That's like he's my new hero. how he pulled that shit off with it. You got, the language thing you got to accept, I mean, we're working in Italy, we got the Italian, then we got the German, we got the Spanish, and then we got English, then we got my English. So, we're juggling like 5 balls in the air, but movies aren't about language, we're working with talented people, and whenever we get, it was almost the kind of thing as we work with that group, we got to Germany and now we got we got a shot of fucking adrenaline, from the people there.
Sure.
I mean, we brought a lot of our own guys and then we got new guys. And then, when we started wearing down, we flew to Mexico and then we got another jolt of crazy energy. And, the crews always come on. They could tell, we're coming with our rep, just having Willem there, is like making a statement that, we're not playing fucking games, and the guys, rise to the occasion. So it's like, it's all good, man.
It was a beautiful looking film. So going from country to country, really, it looked awesome. Editing is the last stage of storytelling. I'm curious what changed about your movie in the editing room and if there's any deleted scenes you want to tell us about.
It wasn't a long script. It was not, the deleted, you got to make the scenes come to life. I work with some real great editors, and these guys, Leo stepped up when he needed to. And
were there any scenes that you had to cut that you still miss, but you had to cut for time or clarity or something like that?
No, we're not the cut for any. We're final cut filmmakers, so we don't have. It's not a matter of time. I don't think there's anything. I don't remember anything that we. Maybe there is. I don't remember.
Chris,
I'm sure there's something.
No, I don't recall that anything was cut.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a lot of scenes in a movie. You know what I'm saying? Right. I mean, maybe approaches to some of these scenes. I mean. Maybe we use them in a different way, or, like we had a couple of, we did some kind of, especially when we're in the studio in Germany, we could, when you're on the top of a fucking mountain and it's just it's below zero, you're not doing a lot of, what I mean, directorial improvisation or, playing. But when you're in a, nice warm studio or air conditioned studio or, you know what I mean? And it's got a roof over your head and, you got the time and you got the equipment and, everybody's like, not fighting the elements. And maybe we did certain things that we were, kind of outside our box, you know what I mean?
I think it's interesting. You were talking about language a second ago, that there's no subtitles in the movie. At first I was like, well, wait, how are we supposed to understand this? But then I kind of realized that it added a more meditative tone. Tell us about your decision to specifically not subtitle the different languages.
Well, I mean, if the character is not understanding the other character, why should the audience?
That makes sense.
If the guy is saying in Inuit or in Russian, I want rum, and Willem's going, huh, what, huh? And he wants rum. The audience would be screaming, he fucking wants rum, asshole. You know what I mean? Clint does not understand the guy.
Right.
Okay. So if the audience is going to understand what your lead actor is not going to understand that, it doesn't make sense to me.
There's almost, going back to the dreamlike state a moment ago, I'm just curious how it appeared on the page sometimes, because you have some really strange and beautiful imagery ranging from the sunrise,
like which one?
In the cave, and even the talking fish. And I'm just curious, like, was that something that hit you as you were writing, and you would just kind of write it out on the page and decide, you know what, we are going to have a sunrise in a pond, in a cave. And, I don't care what it's going to take. We're going to get a fish to talk. I'm just curious about kind of, the ramifications of what happens when you write something wild and surreal, knowing that you're going to need to pull it off on a budget.
In terms of the fish had to talk, because the film in large part talks about the constrictive nature of language if you're trying to get in touch with some kind of inner or outer reality. And, some of the producers that Abel was talking to, they didn't understand why the fish were talking. And, Abel's reaction is, well, they had to talk. I mean, a large part of the movie is about that.
With the fish, it was like, it's karma, bro. You know, you trust the process. We went to the top of the mountain, okay? It was snowing that day. That was a real Inuit. I mean, he got that role because he built an igloo on a videotape, okay? He was with those fish. They weren't foreign to him. You dig? Willem's from Wisconsin. He's from he's fishing and all that shit. You know, he ain't from the Bronx like me. You know what I mean? This is all like, he got it. Those dogs are real dogs. They're there. He's not afraid of those dogs because he just did a movie. It was another karmic miracle that he did a movie where he was running dogs for 3 months. Okay? So the idea of him running them dogs, which seems so crazy when we thought of it, he just came off a dog sled. Okay? What kind of fucking piece of stroke of luck is that? And he comes and now he's together. Those are the real dogs. And we were up there. And the fish, and it went down there, and the camera's on it, and yeah, we're ready to do whatever it's. You know, you're down to how do you drill somebody in the head, or how do you film somebody get, or, it's like practical filmmaking. You know what I'm saying? You dig, and then the miracle happens for you, or it don't. You know.
I know we're starting to run out of time, so one of the questions I definitely want to ask is, what was your toughest scene? And how did you creatively rise to the challenge? So, Chris, we could start with your toughest scene on the page, maybe the scene you kept coming back to over and over, and how did you solve the problem? And Abel, of course, anything on the page or especially on set, your toughest scene. But Chris, starting with you, your toughest scene, and how did you rise to the challenge creatively?
I'll answer it by giving you a short story. I'm standing in Abel's loft. We've just finished New Rose Hotel. And I'm 58 years old. And this woman says to me, how long did it take you to write New Rose Hotel? And Abel says to her, 58 years. And he's right. So when you talk to me about a toughest scene, they're all on a par because it's the culmination of so much that I couldn't say to you, yeah, I was struggling with this, I was struggling with that. Rightly or wrongly, I was just writing it, and whatever comes out, comes out. And am I right, Abel?
Yeah, no, for sure. There's nothing really, I don't know, fighting in a war, go to Afghanistan and fighting there. That's difficult. Making a movie is the pleasure, it's like all good, man. The overall positive nature of actually making a movie and doing it and shooting it. It never fails for me.
Abel, there was no scene as you were filming around the world that you found to be logistically really difficult and kind of was driving you crazy on a day of shooting?
No, it's not like that. I don't know. What can I tell you? Okay, here's a good example. So we're doing a whole fucking movie, hanging him off a fucking cliff. Way below zero, rocks falling all over. He's fucking up there. All kinds of dogs. Some of this, racing those dogs are not that fucking, all kinds of things. Just flying all over the world is danger. All this fucking shit. So the last day we're shooting in Mexico City he's dancing with the kids, going around, the circle of the dancing. And it's always the last day of shooting. I always had this paranoia, No, we still had to fight the bear. Anyway, he's dancing with these kids around that tree. And he steps in a hole. He almost breaks his fucking leg. Okay. Do you think what I'm saying? So he actually got her. He hurt his fucking knee dancing with a bunch of children. You know what I mean? So, there's a difficulty. You don't know what crazy shit could happen when you're filming, But,
sure.
Just stay positive. Anyway, he fought the bear anyway. One leg.
Well, so, I guess, as before we talk about what's next, I'm just curious, Abel, what's the one that got away? Do you have a project that you've been working on for years that you still hope to one day bring to the screen, an old script, something like that just hasn't found its home yet?
We're working on Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Oh, okay.
That was one script because we feel it was never done. It's always done as like the werewolf, where one guy becomes the other guy. It's like father-son story of two separate, complete individuals, and that's never been done. So that's something we've been thinking about.
Well, because I know that you were close to making it at Warner Brothers, and just the studio system really wasn't on board with what you were going for.
No. We were going to do it with 50 Cent and who's the actor that was in Mary? Forrest Whitaker. We still can do it with 50 Cent and Forrest Whitaker.
Okay. Yeah. So other than Jekyll and Hyde, is there anything else that you guys are sitting down to write as your next project?
We're talking, right? I mean,
all right. He's
got an idea about the erectile dysfunction clinic. Tell him about that. We don't want to give away any state secrets.
That sounds like an interesting project. Does it have a title?
Yeah.
ED.
Yikes. Well, I guess one thing to end on is, what would you say was the biggest lesson maybe of this film, if there was
here
anything?
He goes with these lessons.
I know the lessons are fun. The lessons are fun. You had such a long process to make this. And if there's any advice you could impart to other filmmakers now that you're at the end of the journey, rather than
if you need more than $15,000, don't go on a crowd sharing site. That was my biggest lesson.
Chris?
Well, the whole it took a long time to write this. So the obvious answer is you just got to keep persevering and let it keep evolving and never give up. It's not a question of surviving. It's a question of prevailing.
I think that's a great way to say it. I love the imagery in this movie. I really appreciate you both for being so generous with your time and making such a meditative film. Thanks again, Abel and Chris, for chatting today.
Yeah, Jeff, thanks. Chris, nice. Good seeing you, bro.
Take care.
And that's how the Q&A went down. Special thanks again to co-writer-director Abel Ferrara and co-writer Christ Zois for being so generous with their time about speaking about their creative process on their latest film, Siberia. And folks, I hope you'll help spread the word about Siberia, because smaller films like this sometimes get lost in the marketplace. And it really is an accomplishment to put so much dreamlike imagery and put the audience into a meditative state in a film like this. So I hope you'll spread the word about Siberia. And folks, remember, this podcast started as a virtual screening. If you would like to join us for future virtual screenings, feel free to go to backstory.net/events. And you could sign up to get on our free email list over there and get invites. So I encourage you to get on our list. And while you're surfing around online, I hope you also check out Backstory Magazine over at backstory.net. You could read us on a desktop or laptop or via our iPad app, Backstory. If you've never read us before, I hope you consider checking out our free issue, which you could read in its entirety. And if you like it, I hope you consider becoming a subscriber. And if you do want to become a subscriber, you could use discount code SAVE5 to save $5 off a 1-year subscription. Your subscription gets you access to any new issue we publish, and of course, our archive as well. We currently go back to about issue 28 or so, and we're adding new issues to the archive as we get a chance in between publishing new content. And speaking of new content, issue 43 is our current issue. It's our Oscar issue. And of course, the Oscar issues are a bit in the rearview mirror, but we are still continuing to add new articles to the issue. We recently added an interview with the In the Heights screenwriter, and of course, the creative team behind Pixar's Luca. So we are able, as a digital magazine, to drop in new articles, and it's something that we love doing, and just another reason to subscribe to Backstory. Look, it would really mean a lot to me to have my podcast listeners and my YouTube watchers consider becoming subscribers to my passion project. So thanks for considering. The Q&A with Jeff Goldsmith is a copyright of Unlikely Films Incorporated in 2021. All rights reserved. And folks, if you ever want to get in touch, feel free to drop me a line at backstoryletters@gmail.com. I check that email every now and then, and I might be a little slow to respond. So, just write your email. I will get back to you, I promise. You could also, of course, find me on social media, both on Instagram and Twitter as Yo Goldsmith. Yo Goldsmith is on both those platforms. I also run the Backstory Magazine, Instagram, and Twitter of Backstory_mag. So feel free to find me there. I also have a Facebook fan page for Jeff Goldsmith. I don't check it as often. I apologize. I'll try and get a little better about that. But nonetheless, I'm happy to answer what questions you may have. I'm Jeff Goldsmith, the publisher of Backstory Magazine and the host of the Q&A, thanking you for tuning in and telling you to stay out of trouble. Till next week.